as explosions rang out in the night across the Pardis district in eastern Tehran, and as the mastermind who had effectively been running the country's wartime operations for the past 3 weeks collapsed amid the rubble of his daughter's home. Who could this Islamic Revolutionary regime, already bereft of its supreme leader, possibly rely on to steady the ship of state as it rocked violently in the storm? In the early hours of March the 18th, Iranian President Pezeshkian confirmed in a somber tone a report that had been circulating for over a dozen hours. Ali Larijani, Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, had been killed in a precision airstrike launched by Israel. Also perishing in the inferno alongside him were his son, Mortaza Larijani, and several close aides. Almost simultaneously, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu appeared on social media. This marked the third consecutive day he had released a video to prove he was still alive, as the hardline Israeli leader was well aware that following the announcement of Larijani's elimination, he had become the top target on Iran's list of those to be avenged. To understand what Larijani's death means for Iran today, one need only look at how the Israelis and Americans have labeled him. In its battle report, the Israel Defense Forces directly referred to him as Iran's de facto leader. Netanyahu was even more blunt in his televised address, pointing out that Larijani was the leader of the gang that used violence to intimidate the Iranian people, and that his elimination was intended to create a real opportunity for the Iranian people to overthrow that regime. US President Trump echoed this sentiment, emphasizing that Larijani bore direct responsibility for the deaths of Iranian protesters in the past, and was the country's top figure. It is clear from these assessments by his adversaries that since the death of former Supreme Leader Khamenei in a US airstrike on February the 28th, it was Ali Larijani, a member of one of Iran's most prominent Shia families, who took up the hottest political baton in the shortest possible time. He not only holds the key position of Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council in name, but has also served as the de facto wartime architect of the entire nation during this most vulnerable period, while the new leader, Mojtaba, remains hidden behind the scenes to complete the power transition. He has consolidated the forces of the Revolutionary Guards, coordinated relations among various factions, and even directly led the true commitment for retaliatory operation against Israel and the United States. From Israel's perspective, having killed Khamenei only to find Iran still putting up a fierce resistance, the problem must lie with Larijani. If they could eliminate this de facto leader as well, Iran would inevitably descend into leaderless chaos. Looking back on Ali Larijani's life, one finds that this man is almost a microcosm of the modern history of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Born in Naaf, Iraq, he grew up in a prominent religious family that Time magazine dubbed Iran's Kennedy family. His father was a leading religious scholar, and his brothers later rose to become the head of the judiciary and the chairman of the Guardian Council, respectively. He married the daughter of one of Khomeini's close advisors, thereby forming a familial bond with the revolution's founding fathers. He holds a Ph.D. in Western philosophy from the University of Tehran and has written a dissertation on Kant. Yet he also tempered his resolve on the battlefields of the Iran-Iraq War. He has headed the National Broadcasting Network, served as Speaker of Parliament for 12 years, held 4 different ministerial posts, and maintained deep ties with the military through his service in the Revolutionary Guards. He played a crucial behind-the-scenes role in the final conclusion of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. As a figure who understands both Western ways of thinking and the intricacies of internal power struggles, a representative of a clerical family, and a staunch veteran of the Revolutionary Guards, everyone understood that, when he returned to serve as Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, Khamenei had brought out his most critical, stabilizing force. The Israelis chose to take action against him, and the reasons they gave are already out in the open. Netanyahu acknowledged that relying solely on high-intensity military bombardment, in conjunction with the United States, was simply incapable of toppling the Iranian regime. Although the country was under bombardment, its internal cohesion had not collapsed. Consequently, Israel shifted its strategy. They no longer sought to completely annihilate Iran's military on the battlefield, but instead turned to targeted assassinations, specifically hunting down the powerful figures who kept the regime functioning. From Khamenei to Larijani, and on to Qasem Soleimani, the commander of the Ba'athi militia, who was killed in the same airstrike. Israel's objective is crystal clear: to use these surgical strikes to peel away the layers of Iran's decision-making core, one by one, until the regime is paralyzed by the loss of all its brains. Trump has also expressed agreement with this approach, believing that such pressure will ultimately drive internal change within Iran. Beyond this publicly stated goal of regime change, Israel's decision to assassinate Larijani at this particular juncture was driven by other considerations that, while unspoken, are easy to surmise. Larijani was the true mastermind behind Iran's recent retaliatory actions against the US and Israel. While alive, he had vowed to strike back with unprecedented force. Since he orchestrated the attacks, his elimination would naturally weaken the intensity and execution capabilities of Iran's future retaliatory actions to the greatest extent possible. Another significant reason may relate to nuclear negotiations. Larijani was one of the key architects of the Iran nuclear deal. Although he held a hardline stance, he always maintained a pragmatic streak. In the final weeks of his life, he was even engaging in indirect contact with the United States through channels such as Oman. Israel clearly feared that if the conflict reached a stalemate, the US might revisit the option of negotiations. Larijani was precisely the key figure capable of driving the negotiation process forward in Tehran. Killing him effectively blocked the path to a potential compromise, forcing Iran's nuclear policy to take a radical turn. Faced with such a devastating blow, Iran's response was exceptionally resolute. President Pezeshkian, while confirming the news of his death, emphasized that Larijani's passing was an irreparable and immense loss, but that Iran would continue to adhere to the resistance strategy combining rationality and foresight he had established during his lifetime. Iranian Armed Forces Commander Hatami immediately issued a warning, stating that Iran would respond resolutely to this assassination and make the enemy regret their actions. The Revolutionary Guards also issued a statement hailing Larijani as a great martyr, declaring that his blood would become a source of strength for the nation's awakening and that retribution would surely come. The question is, exactly how will Iran carry out its revenge? Based on the current analysis, Israel was the mastermind behind this attack. While the US military provided support, it was not the party that directly pulled the trigger. Therefore, Iran's subsequent retaliation will likely target Israel as the primary target, rather than directly going to war with the United States. Iran has already vowed to continue hunting down Netanyahu. The fact that the Israeli Prime Minister has released videos for 3 consecutive days to prove he is still alive is clearly not for the sake of entertaining the public, but because he genuinely feels a very real threat. In terms of military measures, Iran is likely to deploy more advanced ballistic missiles, such as the longer-range, higher-precision Mudstone missiles, to launch a new round of saturation strikes against core Israeli cities like Tel Aviv. With Larijani's passing, the most critical pillar maintaining the balance of power within Iran has collapsed. During his lifetime, he served as both the link connecting the clergy, the Revolutionary Guards, and the civilian government, and as a buffer suppressing open conflict between hardliners and pragmatists. Now that this link has vanished, it remains to be seen whether cracks will appear in Tehran's power core, and whether the new leader, Mojtaba, can truly take control of the situation without Larijani's guidance. But at least for now, the official response from Iran remains one of vengeance and resistance. This new wave of bloodshed, triggered by the assassination of the mastermind, is bound to push the situation across the entire Middle East toward an even more unpredictable direction.